All right, William. So, ever-changing political landscape has changed again drastically, much to the against the expectations and hopes from the start of Republican race. I mean, no one probably would have imagined in the beginning that at one point, and when we are so close to the Iowa caucuses, uh, Ron Paul and Gingrich are leading the race.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, especially the reverse of was it Ron Paul was like fourth or fifth
Yeah, they were
just 10 days
like
ago, and now he's number one, and Gingrich is
they
number two, and he was number one, and there's like what a 30-point swing difference.
for most part of the race, Gingrich and Ron Paul were in single digits.
Right,
You know,
right.
so it has changed so much. So, what do you think is changing this landscape so much?
Oh, I think the biggest thing that's changed it up to this point, knocking Gingrich off the top, has been Perry's negative ads and Romney's negative ads against Gingrich.
This is a very bothering to me in American politics that unfortunately the negative ads have such a huge impact on campaigns. I mean, when you talk to the people, everybody's against negative ads, everybody criticizes negative ads,
Right.
but then people get so much influenced by negative ads that they may change the whole landscape like we are seeing now. I mean, it's
Well, that's easy to happen, though. I mean, it's just like the news media. Every time, if you hear every day that somebody's being murdered and somebody's being murdered, after so many days, all you can think about is people being murdered. And the reality is, that's a small part of the people being actually killed, but that's all you actually hear. I mean, that was really big in the 80s when they had this thing against crime and they were trying to paint the black community one certain way. All you heard about is black people killing each other, black people killing this person, black people robbing these. And if you came to this country, all you think is, well, there's nobody good in this country that's black. And it's just kind of the same with the negative ads. If you continually say negative things, whether people want to believe it, subconsciously that's all they hear and that's all they remember, and it's reflected in their opinions when you poll them. And that's what we're seeing right now with Gingrich and Paul. Paul getting, because he has kind of stayed out of the fray of the negatives, and he has had a few against Gingrich, but he hasn't had the attacks or the effects that uh,
Romney and Perry.
Romney and Perry have had on Gingrich in the latest, the last 10 days actually.
I mean, personally, to me, if I see a negative ad from you about somebody else, it just turns me off from.
You would think that. Well, but that is happening, and what's
Yeah.
happening is because people are mad at Romney and mad at Perry, and now they're mad at Gingrich. Here comes Paul,
Mhm.
who has had a very consistent message throughout. He has been himself for 36 years. He's an economist. He actually knows what he's talking about. His domestic views are a little libertarian, but fiscally he's very conservative. Uh, the problem I have with him being in the lead is it really messes up the people who would actually get the nomination. No matter how it turns out in Iowa, I don't think he can get the nomination of the Republican Party. And it also shows you another thing about the Republican Party. People are not happy with who they have to choose as a candidate to represent them to run against Obama.
Well, this is the thing, William. The people used to say this about Iowa too in the beginning, just 2 months ago. But now he's at the top in Iowa. So, I mean, it's just I think premature to say that he will not be able to get nomination because things can change in other places too, just like Iowa.
You're right, you're right.
You know.
But the problem with Paul is he's too controversial. And he's not conservative on all views. And I don't know if the conservative base will vote for him. I think he will get the appeal of some of the independents, maybe a few moderates, but I think the Republican Party as a whole is a little bit afraid of Paul because of his, I won't say radicalism, but he has some extreme views on certain things.
Libertarian views.
Well, I don't want to label it as that, but that would be more accurate. More of his libertarian views on domestic issues and even on some of his foreign policy.
Well, I think that Ron Paul has the social agenda has a lot of appeal for middle of the road and the leftist people. I mean,
Oh, absolutely, especially domestically.
Right, and his anti-war views have a lot of appeal for the middle of the road and left people.
I would agree.
Right, people. So I think that it's very premature to guess that he will not be able to get neutral votes or the left votes. He actually can get votes.
I think he can, but I think it's going to happen the same way it did with Ross Perot. Unfortunately, he will take a lot of the votes that ordinarily would go to a Republican candidate and divide the vote, which basically makes Obama a shoo-in.
Oh, well, if he is the Republican candidate, so he's not snatching votes from anywhere.
But here's the problem. If he doesn't get the nomination, he may actually go in as an independent, which he could very well do.
Well, he didn't go independent in the past races. So,
true, this is true.
And he's saying that he will not go independent in races. So, and he has very good chance. I think very good chances of getting the nomination.
But can he beat Obama? That's the bottom line. Well, can he beat Obama?
Well, the polls right now are showing that no Republican candidate can beat Obama. So,
yeah, but I think they favor any other candidate other than Paul more than they would. That's all I'm saying. If he gets the nomination, I don't see him winning against Obama. Period. I don't see it.
See, I think that the Romney cannot beat Obama.
I would agree.
The Perry cannot beat Obama.
I would agree.
Bachmann cannot beat Obama.
I would agree.
Santorum cannot beat Obama.
I would totally agree.
Huntsman cannot beat Obama.
No, he cannot. He's too liberal.
So only two people left who
could possibly
beat Obama are Newt Gingrich and Ron Paul.
Well, but I give the advantage in that scenario to Newt Gingrich because I think he harnesses the frustration that people have with the political system at the moment. Now, granted, he is an insider and he was in government for over 15 years, but he has the ability to articulate, sometimes to the point where he actually makes you feel like he's talking down to you about how to make the system work. I would have to say with Newt also that he has actually changed the way he's approached in dealing with media and dealing with his constituents and dealing with the public at large. Which, if he maintains that, but you know as well as I know, Newt has the ability to flip a switch at any moment and become old Newt, which basically turns him off from anyone, including his own party. And also, I think you see a lot of people supporting Paul because there are a lot of people who don't like Gingrich, period, from the old guard, from the Reagan days, from Bush 1 days. So that right there has a lot to play with what's happening in Iowa also. Kind of a revolt against Newt.
Yes, I think you're right, but the thing is that if I put what you said in a different way, the difference is that Newt is a politician,
correct,
and Ron Paul is just way too honest and way too straightforward for regular politics.
And you know as well as I know, that's not what wins elections.
That doesn't really.
You have to be political. You have to be able to know when to speak, when not to speak, when to be blatantly honest, which is probably never in real politics, and when to just pretend as if you didn't actually hear the question, which happens a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I have always hold that view in Democratic Party too, that if the honest people were to win the election, then Dennis Kucinich would have won election long time ago.
Absolutely.
Long time ago. But he's just way too honest. And way too straightforward for regular politics.
Well, and that's when you have to get away from the politics and say, okay, when you're looking at a candidate, you have to look at the substance, A, of the individual, B, their political stances, as well as what they truly pretend that they believe. And that's what makes it difficult to actually choose a candidate in either party now, because in a lot of ways you don't know what they really stand for, what they really are for, and what they're not against. Now, Gingrich, I have to say, he's probably been pretty consistent with a moderate Republican agenda. Conservatively, on his conservative agenda, it's always fiscally. I think when it comes to domestic, he's moderate. He's not quite as, hard line. That is kind of the middle of the road. Ron Paul is kind of like the opposite. He is kind of a free-for-all when it comes to domestic policy. He's definitely anti-war. He's basically anti-foreign policy altogether. He's more of an isolationist. I don't know if we need that right now. I don't know if that actually even works in our world that we're in right now.
You know, William, I in United States for now since '94. That's like 17 years, and I grew up in Pakistan. You know, and I can tell you that a lot of what we call in our regular discussions in the United States the hate for America
Right.
in the Asian countries and Muslim countries and stuff is 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 a very large part due to America's foreign policy.
Oh, absolutely.
So if I mean, and I personally think that the Ron Paul type foreign policy changes will have a very positive effect.
But
in,
I think you're right. But I think the reality is we have to be specific on what those changes will be, because if they are too isolationist, initially they may sound great, but what about the big effect? I mean, you've been here for 17 years. If it was Ron Paul's way, you may not be here.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So you have to balance it out and not just go with the blanket idea. I'm all for, I mean, and we could even get into discussion even later about immigration reform and things like that. But if you put yourself as an isolationist, I think a lot of these countries that thought they hate you really will change their tune, because whether they like us or not, you still like the foreign aid. You still like being able to get food. You still like getting weapons, you know? So you have to, you still like us importing your goods. If we become a true isolationist, we're the number one importer of Pakistan's textile goods. I mean, we import their goods. We sell things and buy things from them. We want to be friends with them because they have nuclear weapons. So I'm just saying, you have to be careful how you handle that foreign policy, because it's not just simple. It's not simple, is my point.
Yeah, you know, historically, the Hoovers and Roosevelt's isolationism did not work either,
No,
and
it doesn't.
they ultimately had to give them up,
Right.
and they had to get involved in World War II and stuff like that. Otherwise, Nazis were just
Gonna take over the world.
running over the whole world, and that. A complete isolationism may not work. It has not worked in the
Right.
before.
With
But-
any country.
Right.
With any country, it
Right.
doesn't work.
Right, and we live in a world that is getting smaller and smaller every day. Our interdependence on each other is increasing every day. Globalization and
Right.
all that stuff, international trade. So isolationism is probably not the solution. But I don't think that Ron Paul is an isolationist. He is. I think he says that we don't have to be the police of the world anymore.
That you know what?
Right.
I with that I do agree. But unfortunately, when he says that, he's strictly talking military. When I think of it, I think of everything. I'm saying you cut foreign aid. I'm saying you cut. If you're not my friend, you don't need my food. You know, the same thing happened with Korea, with the leader dying there. They were going to send them millions of dollars of food again to feed their people. Well, that doesn't ever get to the people. It stays with the 1% or 2% of Korea that enjoys eating all that good food or traded for weapons. So, you know what I'm saying? There has to be some change in all of our policy, not just foreign, but domestic, everything, period. That's what I think. And I think Ron Paul is right on the cusp of being accurate. I just don't want him to go completely radical, because I think with his agenda, he really could go the other way.
See, the thing is that William,
But
it's not your international reputation or international influence. With economy is not as good as it used to be. You know, there are very genuine financial concerns too. I mean,
Absolutely.
I mean, we just simply cannot pay for all this influence and all this interference throughout the world. I mean, see Libya or Syria or whatever.
I know, I agree.
It's just an extra expense. I mean, we ended the Iraq war, but what we got from the Iraq war except the dead people and the debt, you know.
I would agree with you there. And actually, I heard a gentleman that worked for the CIA. He said, by removing Saddam Hussein, we basically just opened Iraq up to Iran.
To Iran.